The car tires bit into the asphalt, screeching to a sudden, jarring halt in front of the Sunny Star Family Fun Center. Before the engine had even ticked into silence, the back door swung open. Zoe scrambled out, her boots hitting the pavement with a sharp thud. She did not wait. She sprinted toward the entrance, the distance closing fast. Polly, Serena, Yolanda, Olivia, and Courtney were already there, shifting their weight and checking the glass doors. Holly and Fiona stood behind them, watching the group converge. The energy was electric, a sudden release of tension after the long drive. They moved as a single unit, their sneakers squeaking against the concrete as they gathered at the threshold. The air near the entrance already carried the faint, metallic scent of ozone and the distant, layered hum of hundreds of machines working in unison. Zoe pushed to the front, her eyes scanning the lobby. The high-pitched chime of prize machines and the deep, pulsing bass of racing games leaked through the frame, pulling them forward. They did not hesitate. With a collective push, they surged through the doors and into the chaotic, neon-lit hum of the arcade. Polly shouted, "Arcade games first," and the group fractured into action. Zoe and Holly reached the air hockey table at the same time. They grabbed the mallets, their wrists snapping back and forth with rapid, mechanical precision. The puck became a blurred streak of white, ricocheting off the side rails with sharp, rhythmic cracks. Across the aisle, the environment felt like a steady pulse. Serena stood before the basketball hoops, her movements fluid and repetitive. She tossed the balls in a high, consistent arc, each one dropping through the net with a clean, satisfying swish. The sound was constant, a metronome for the room. Zoe lunged forward, her mallet connecting with the puck, driving it toward the goal. Holly countered, her wrist flicking to send the disc careening back toward Zoe's side. The friction of the plastic on the table created a low, constant hum that blended with the background noise of the hall. Every movement was fast, deliberate, and calibrated for speed. The air hockey table clattered as they pushed harder, the game accelerating until the strikes and rebounds merged into a singular, frantic pace of play. The overhead lights flickered once and plunged the center into a deep, artificial twilight. The group converged on the laser game, their movements synchronized by the sudden shift in atmosphere. Olivia stepped up first, her fingers locking onto the plastic grip of the blaster. She braced her feet, eyes scanning the dark, glowing geometry of the arena. She pulled the trigger. A series of rapid-fire pulses hit the targets, each impact registering with a sharp, electronic beep. Beside her, the ticket machine groaned into life. It began to feed a long, serrated strip of paper into the collection bin. Yolanda reached out, catching the end of the ribbon, and started to coil it around her forearm. It grew into a thick, multicolored snake of paper that spiraled toward her elbow. Olivia leaned into her aim, sweat beading on her forehead as she tracked a final, elusive target. The machine spat out a continuous stream of tickets, piling them high on the floor. They stood over the growing heap, the sheer volume of paper signaling a clear victory. They had won, and the weight of the tickets in their hands confirmed it. The group pushed through the exit doors, trading the mechanical hum for the cooling evening air. The miniature golf course lay ahead, a sprawling stretch of artificial turf under the setting sun. They moved to the first hole, the atmosphere shifting from frantic speed to deliberate stillness. Zoe stepped up, her putter steady in her grip. She leaned over the ball, her tongue pressed against her teeth in deep concentration. She tapped the club. The ball rolled, tracked true, clicked against the rim of the cup, and spun away at the last millisecond. A groan rippled through the group. They moved to the third hole, the stakes rising as the light faded further. Polly stepped forward, swinging her club with a casual, practiced flick. The ball caught the incline of the ramp, rolled smooth and straight, and dropped into the center of the cup with a hollow, metallic clink. The silence broke instantly. Cheers erupted from the group, bouncing off the nearby waterfall and echoing across the course. The mood lifted, the individual focus on scorecards vanished, replaced by a shared surge of excitement that turned the game into a unified celebration of the evening. The group left the golf course behind and moved toward the final challenge of the night. The go-kart track waited under the floodlights, a serpentine path of asphalt marked by tire, rubber, and metal barriers. They approached the staging area, where the air grew heavy with the sharp, biting scent of gasoline and hot exhaust. The transition was immediate. They reached for the equipment racks, snapping the buckles of their helmets until the straps sat tight against their chins. One by one, they stepped into the low-slung, rigid seats of the carts. The machines were stripped down to the frame, vibrating against the concrete as the engines sputtered into a synchronized, low-frequency roar. Zoe felt the vibration climb up through the base of the seat and into her spine. Beside her, Fiona and the others settled into their positions, hands locking onto the steering wheels. The mechanical hum of the arcade and the quiet of the golf course were gone, replaced by the impatient, throaty growl of idling motors. The group sat motionless, staring ahead at the darkened track, waiting for the signal that would turn the evening into a blur of speed and competition. A harsh, high-pitched signal cut through the air. The idling engines erupted into a unified, deafening roar. Every pedal hit the floorboards simultaneously. The carts lurched forward, the sudden surge of momentum pinning them deep into the hard, plastic seats. Zoe felt the vibration travel through her arms as the machine surged past the starting line, its engine pitch rising into a frantic whine. She kept her right foot locked down, refusing to ease off as the first tight curve approached. The asphalt blurred into a dark, rushing smear beneath her. She gripped the steering wheel, her knuckles turning bone white as she fought the centrifugal force trying to pull her wide. She leaned hard into the turn, shifting her weight to maintain traction. The tires protested, releasing a sharp, rubbery squeal that echoed off the track barriers. Her body braced against the frame, every muscle tight as she navigated the sharp bend. The track wall rushed by, inches from her reach. She maintained her line, her eyes fixed on the exit of the curve, feeling the raw, unfiltered adrenaline of the speed vibrating through the very floor of the cart. Fiona emerged from the trailing pack, her cart buzzing like a hornet as she pulled level with Zoe. The two machines surged together, the gap between them vanishing until their side guards locked with a sharp, metallic clatter. Zoe felt the vibration of the impact travel through her frame, jarring her teeth. She swerved, trying to break the contact, but Fiona mirrored her movement instantly. They were locked in a rhythmic, violent dance, weaving through the track with engines screaming in protest. The wind whipped past their faces, carrying the smell of burning rubber and heated metal. "Move over," Fiona shouted, her voice barely audible over the high-pitched whine of the motors. Zoe didn't yield. She slammed her foot harder against the accelerator, her cart straining as she pushed against the resistance of the wind. They hit a narrow straightaway, wheels bumping again as they fought for the optimal line. The track seemed to shrink around them, the barriers closing in. Every time Zoe tried to pull away, the frame of the other cart nudged hers, shaking her focus. They were neck and neck, neither willing to back down, the competitive pressure mounting with every meter of asphalt they conquered. The finish line banner hung ahead, a bright, flapping rectangle that seemed to pull them forward. Zoe and Fiona were still locked together, their wheels grazing, when a third engine roar surged from the periphery. Yolanda burst from the pack, her cart hugging the inner edge of the track with terrifying precision. She didn't look at them, her eyes were fixed on the checkered flag. The gap closed in a heartbeat. Yolanda surged past the lead pair just as the asphalt reached the final marker. She threw one hand into the air, fingers spread in a sharp victory sign, as her front wheels cut across the line. The others followed, their engines stuttering as they eased off the pedals. The sudden absence of the roaring motors left a ringing silence in their ears. Zoe pulled her cart to a halt, the smell of ozone and hot rubber hanging heavy in the air. She sat back, her chest heaving with every intake of breath, the adrenaline slowly draining from her limbs. Around her, the others brought their machines to a stop, their faces flushed and damp with sweat. They sat in the low seats for a long moment, simply catching their breath, the exhilaration of the race still pulsing through their veins. They climbed out of the carts and trekked toward the prize counter, legs still buzzing from the ride. Yolanda led the way, dumping her massive, tangled piles of tickets onto the wide metal scale. The machine roared to life, churning through the paper with a rhythmic clatter that sounded like a waterfall of confetti. They crowded around, watching the display climb, their hands reaching out to claim the rewards. Plush animals and glowing keychains disappeared into their arms as the counter cleared. By the time they reached the pizza table, the sky outside had bruised into a deep, heavy purple. Steam rose from the boxes in thin, swirling ribbons that caught the overhead light. They didn't talk much at first, just reached for slices with quick, messy movements, the grease and sauce a badge of their long day. As the initial hunger faded, the energy in the group shifted, softening into a warm, satisfied hum. They began to point at their new souvenirs, replaying the tightest curves and the closest misses from the track. Laughter bubbled up, lighter now, stripped of the competitive edge that had defined their earlier hours. They leaned in close, the shared meal anchoring them in the quiet aftermath of the noise. Zoe looked at the faces around the table, the remnants of the meal scattered across the surface. She pushed her pizza box aside and stood up. "Everything was fun," she said, "because we were together." The group rose in unison, their chairs scraping against the floor. They walked toward the parking lot, their voices trailing off into the cool night air, as they exchanged final promises to meet again soon. The heavy gates of the fun center groaned as they rolled shut behind them, sealing away the noise and the glowing neon. Zoe climbed back into the car, the interior quiet and steady. She settled into the seat, her head sinking back against the cushioning. Outside, the vibrant lights of the center began to shrink, turning into blurred pinpricks of color against the dark landscape. As the vehicle pulled away, the distance between her and the fun center grew. She watched the glow soften and eventually vanish, leaving behind a deep, steady sense of quiet. The day had left its mark, but the noise had faded, leaving only the clarity of the time spent in company. She closed her eyes, the rhythmic motion of the car anchoring her in the present.